breathing. And then we're going to go into some nice back releases, hamstring stretches, that kind of thing. So like I said, 2 blocks would be ideal. Any type of strap type apparatus, if you've got it, would be fantastic. We're going to come down onto our backs. If you've got salt bags and you want to use salt bags for the breathing, that's the bomb. But if you don't have them, don't worry about it. Knees together, ankles together, make a nice C with your spine, and then just come down one disc, one vertebra at a time, nice and slow, until the back of the skull arrives. Walk your feet towards your seat. Let's bring those legs up for a little bit of a hug. Maybe interlacing your fingers behind the thighs, right hand on top of left. Relax the shoulders. Give your head a little shake for no. And then just start with some pulsing. And just drawing the legs to you and away from you. The nice thing about this posture is it gives us a really good indication of whether or not we need any height under the back of the skull. So if you find that your chin is lifting up and you're getting wrinkles at the back of the neck, then you want to fold up a towel or a blanket and put that underneath the back of the skull. And then let's allow that pulsing to turn into side to side. Squeeze the thighs, the ankles, and the knees. Keep those feet nice and active. Big, beautiful breaths. And then let the circles happen. I like to kind of use my thumbs to lift up into the backs of the knees, and I think about my knees hanging over my thumbs, almost like a wet towel on a towel rack. And stopping with those circles, you're going to swap the interlacing of the fingers if you're interlacing and change direction with your circles. And then just a little bit of side to side. And then finishing off with just a little bit of pulsing. Hey there, come on down, over here. It's grab your props today, Dave. Oh, yeah, grab them when you're ready, no rush. Just because we didn't know who would turn up, so.
That's true, I knew it'd be here.
And then stopping with the pulsing, let your feet come down onto the floor. We're going to start with a little bit of creeper pose just to kind of warm up our feet and our hips. So soles of the feet on the floor completely. Feel the big toe heel, edge of the foot rooting. See if you can lift your toes evenly, heels, pubic bone, belly button, nose in a nice straight line. Lengthen the back ribs away from the pelvis. Find a nice natural lumbar firm. Place your hands on your belly, elbows on the floor, and just start to focus on breathing into your belly. So with each inhale, you're going to feel the belly expanding. With each exhale, you're going to feel the belly sinking, shrinking, contracting. If you're at home and you've got bolsters and you want to lay on bolsters, feel free. Just blocks and sanitizers. And we're going to use straps. We don't have one like that. We don't have straps. Just really focusing on your body from the inside, focusing on your breath. Let's take 10 more belly breaths here, really encouraging the mind to join the body in the practice today. And then when those 10 reps are complete, we're going to allow the soles of the feet to come together, and we're going to let the knees come apart as we come into a reclined cobbler. Here we want to keep the action or the connection of the big toe edge of the foot, which helps us kind of be our own boundary on the hips. We want to keep that idea of kind of the outer line of the leg lifting up so that we're not just like and falling down to the floor, but we're creating almost like a structure to hold the body within using our muscles. We want to try and keep that neutral pelvis where the pubic bone, hip bones are level. It's another good opportunity to use your elbows and the back of the skull to root down, to really lift up the back rib cage and lengthen the back rib cage away from that neutral pelvis. Then bring the back rib cage down. You might find after that belly breathing that you release the low back a little bit so you can get the front ribs a little more flush with your abdomen. And then it's nice to kind of lift up the back of the skull, kind of lengthen it. You might even want to rock it from side to side, just kind of decompressing the neck. And then eventually bringing the back of the skull down in line from pubic bone to nose. We're then going to bring our fingers to our shoulders, holding onto those shoulders as if we're squeezing them to see if the melon was right. And then reaching with the elbows. I'm just going to do a little bit of upper back opening here. Now that we've opened up our low back, making big, slow circles with our elbows. Using our eyes to see if we can get those elbows to be symmetrical. Moving equal distance, equal speed as we change direction with the circles. If this cobbler pose feels like too much for your hips, you can just take your blocks and wedge those outer thighs, giving them a little bit of support. If it's hard for you to hold on to your shoulders, you just make the elbow circles without squeezing the shoulders. And then stopping with the elbow circles, place your hands on your rib cage. Think about pulling the belly in, as if you were, getting your photo taken and you didn't want your stomach sticking out, so you pull your belly button in. If you can, you pull it down towards the pelvic floor, and then you pull it back up, almost as if the belly button's making like a J-type shape, where you pull it in, down, and back up, and then we tuck it in on the inside of the back ribs. So that's Uddiyana Bandha. Samana Vayu, we think about sometimes like a metal plate, a square-shaped plate between the pubic bone, hip bones, and belly button. And we feel like that heavy plate is pushing down, and then we slide the front muscles and flesh underneath the front rib cage. So it's almost like you're tucking your shirt in, but it's your belly underneath your ribs. Okay? And then we're going to keep the hands on the rib cage. If you want to have one hand on your belly to try and not breathe into that space, go for it. But have your hands on your rib cage. It could be palm down, it could be back of hands on the side ribs, it could be backs of hands reaching around to the back ribs. But find an area of your rib cage that you want to bring awareness to with your hands as you breathe into that space. So with each inhale, you keep the Samana Vayu and the Uddiyana Bandha as you inhale to feel the ribs expanding, ideally in all directions. And then as you exhale, you feel the ribs gently sinking, shrinking, contracting. Really focusing on your body from the inside, focusing on your breath. Now that we've found the rhythm of the breath into the rib cage, let's count 10 more rounds of breath into that space. Remembering there's a back, a side, and a front to the rib cage, there's diagonals, and there's all the spaces in between. When those 10 breaths are complete, you're just going to bring your arms beside you, palms facing up, and once again return to your natural breathing. And from here, we're going to come into snow plow. So we're going to take our hands to our outer thighs and fire up our feet to bring those knees together. And think about rolling the points like we've been practicing doing this month, and keep the knees touching as we heel toe the feet apart. Baby toe edge of the foot is nice and straight. We want to have the shins at a 90-degree angle with the floor ideally. And if we feel our knees tugging, if we bring our feet towards one another, that'll often soften it, but occasionally we need to take our feet a little bit away from our seat to soften that knee stretch, right? So we don't want to feel our knees at all in this posture. The baby toe edge of the foot is nice and straight. And we want to measure to make sure that the heels are equal distance from our pubic bone, equal distance from our seat. And we want to measure to make sure that one knee is not higher than the other. And then at the end of the posture, it's a really good idea to check and see if one knee has gradually become lower than the other knee. As we did on the other posture, we want to think about finding a neutral pelvis, lumbar curve, push into our elbows to lengthen the back rib cage away from the pelvis. Bring the ribs down, lengthen the skull. Let's interlace our fingers, right hand on top of left. Let's let the head come down. And we're going to start with some elbow circles here. Again, just a little bit more release into the upper back, neck, and shoulder area. So hands are behind the back of the skull like a pillow. Our fingers are interlaced, and we're making circles with our elbows. It's opening up that upper back. Good. Change direction with the circles. If it feels like too much to have your hands behind your skull, you can just do elbow circles without the hands behind the skull. Whatever works for you. We don't want any pain in yoga. And then stopping with those circles, we're going to swap the interlacing of our fingers. We're going to bring the elbows towards one another as we exhale. Some of us, the elbows will touch. And we're going to inhale to take the elbows towards the floor. We're going to exhale to bring the elbows together. And we're going to inhale to take the elbows towards the floor. Just opening and closing those armpits. Eventually coming towards the floor. If we're on bolsters, we want to make sure that we're lifting the elbows just a little bit so that we're not getting too much of a good thing. But if you're on the floor and the elbows hit the floor, you can gently root the elbows into the floor because the floor is creating a boundary to keep your shoulders happy. So here we want to once again find beauty on a bandha, which is pulling our belly button in, down towards the pelvic floor and back up, tucking it in on the inside of our back rib cage. We want to find Samana Vayu, which is the front abdomen heavy, like it's made of concrete, sliding up underneath the front rib cage. And then we want to find Prana Vayu, which is floating ribs, the front ribs coming to one another. And then we want to think about the back rib cage rooting back down into the floor to keep that neutral spine. And then I like to think about expanding into that rib cage. Almost like we're doing an expansive belly breath, but it's on the inside and we're not actually holding the breath, right? So it's like as if there was little elves on the inside of your body and they're stretching your ribs and intercostal muscles in all directions and expanding the rib cage outwards. We're going to think about not breathing into the belly, we're going to think about not breathing into the ribs, and we're going to focus on breathing into that top shelf of our lungs. The armpit, chest, sternum, collarbones, throat, shoulder blades, all the spaces in between. So as you close your eyes, inhale to feel that upper chest and shoulder space expanding, broadening. Exhale to feel that space sinking, shrinking, contracting. Think about your inner heels dropping a block. Think about your quads pushing forward to your hamstrings and your calves kicking forward to your shins. Think about towel wrapping the backs of the knees, lifting the backs of the knees up as the kneecaps push back down onto that towel wrap. towards your heels as your heels kick forward towards that ankle crease. So nice, solid legs. Inner line of the leg dropping the blocks, outer line of the leg squeezing in towards imaginary blocks as you continue to breathe into your upper chest and shoulders. Let's take 10 more breaths just like this into the upper chest and shoulders before we once again return to our natural breathing. And then when those 10 breaths are complete, you're going to lift up your head, you're going to bring your arms around, check out your knees, see if one knee got lower than the other knee, bring your skull back down, and then without moving a muscle, imprint your low back. And if you can't imprint your low back because your low back is already imprinted, then you want to kind of visit that, right? Like, you want to really make sure that we're learning to not imprint our low back in all of these postures, because if we can learn to keep that lumbar curve, it's going to take the health of our hips from like 20% to like 80-90%. It just makes such a difference, okay? We're then going to heel toe the feet back to one another.